Okay, we'll be starting סימן Ches, the shir in סימן Ches, which everybody learned already, and then people already in סימן Vav will deal with it in the next shir. סימן Ches discusses קידושין al Tnai, when קידושין are made with a condition, when the condition kicks in, when the condition doesn't kick in, what kinds of conditions. The concept of al Tnai also applies in get, also applies in Chayshon Mishpat. It's difference, the concept that something could be acquired, something could be sold, al Tnai. A get could be given al Tnai also. There's different rules how Tanaim are done. The place where Tanaim are learned from is from Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, when they wanted to have land on the east side of Ever Yarden. So Moshe Rabbeinu made a condition with them, and from those Tanaim, that's when we learn all the dinim of Tnai when it comes to קידושין and to other things also. So when a man makes a קידושין al Tnai, obviously the Tnai is not done by the woman over here, because it's talking about Mekadesh al Tnai. The man makes a Tnai. Then, if the Tnai is fulfilled, she's Mekudeshes. The Aruch HaShulchan gives you an Eitzah Tova that don't make a Tnai which is a lifetime Tnai. For example, a Tnai, don't drink wine or don't eat something, or something which every day of the life is going to be a question if she's Mekudeshes or not. The example he brings is about the woman don't make it Tnai, at night the woman doesn't get drunk, because what happens if 30 years down the line, she's going to get drunk once, then suddenly 30 years, the קידושין are retroactively cancelled. But the idea is, if a Tnai is done, then the קידושין are dependent on the Tnai. There's four things that every Tnai has to have. It's already in Sif Beis. Number one is the Tnai Kafel. Tnai Kafel means if you do, or if kach v'kach, then you're Mekudeshes, and if you don't do kach v'kach, you are not Mekudeshes. Means a double, positive and negative. What happens if you don't fulfill, if you don't say the second part, you just say, if you do kach v'kach, you're Mekudeshes, and you don't say, if you don't do, and then she does not do it, she's still Mekudeshes. The Tnai is batal, the קידושין are still Kayim. The other thing is that the Tnai, the yes and the no have to be dependent on each other. That means it can't be that I'll tell you, if you do kach v'kach, you're Mekudeshes, and if you don't do kach v'kach, then I'll give you money or I'll give you something else. Then that does not work. That's not considered a Tnai kafel. It has to be. Yeah, this is all part of the Tnai. It's all part of understanding what a Tnai kafel is. That means that it's the yes and the no have to be dependent on each other. It's all we're discussing what a Tnai kafel is. Has to be clear. Every Tnai has to be clear to both of them. It has to be a definite Tnai. That means not something that is a maybe, but it's a clear yes and a clear no. What clearly has to be done and what clearly does not have to be done. So Noida Bihuda, Tanina, and Siman Kuf Lamed Gimel. And Tiferet Tzvi disagrees, but there should be a clarity. The second condition after Tnai Kafel is, we say you have to have yes and no, is that the yes has to come before the no. What happens if you say no first and then you say yes? We say that the Aruch HaShulchan explains, if you're going to say, if you don't do this, you're not Mekudesh, and if you do this, you are Mekudesh, then the last words are, you are Mekudesh. And therefore, she could just ignore everything that was said before and say, well, the last words I heard was Yar Mekudesh, and I became a Kudeshes, and the Tnai is batal, and the קידושין are Kayim. That's the second one. The yes has to come before the no. The third one has to be that the condition has to come before what's going to happen, which means if you will do kach v'kach, then you are mekudeshes. Not you are mekudeshes if you do kach v'kach, and you are not mekudeshes if you don't do kach v'kach. The fourth thing is, it has to be something which is possible to happen. Not something which is impossible for somebody to fulfill. And
the third time.
Yeah. Yeah. What happens if you don't do it? What happens afterwards? The chatchila, this is how you're supposed to do it. Tnai kodim l'maisa. What's the machlekes? How to understand what it is?
No, if tnai kodim l'maisa is deeper than you're saying, or if it's maisa.
Or it's also tnai before the maisa, before the קידושין also. Yeah, if you do קידושין first and then you say a condition, it's also that's obviously much harder to say that tnai has any validity. Something which could be fulfilled and not something which is impossible to do it. That you're going to fly without an airplane, you're going to something which is impossible to fulfill. It's also the tnai does not fly. Now, if you make a tnai which has all these four conditions, then the tnai is kayam. She's mekudeshes if she fulfills it. If you make a tnai which does not have all the conditions, depends how it's done, but a lot of times the קידושין are there, and the tnai and the lack of fulfillment of the tnai doesn't have any effect on the actual קידושין. And the קידושין are valid if a tnai is not done kechol dinei hatnoim. A קידושין is valid even if the tnai is not fulfilled. The Rama adds about the yes before the no, that if he says no, yes, no, and he repeats the no afterwards, then we ignore the first no and we take the yes and the no in the right order, and we say that she is mekudesh, that tnai is kayam because the yes came before the no. Within the same topic, yeah. Now there is a way to avoid all this. If you say al-menas or me'achshav, al-menas has the same power as me'achshav, then tnai kafel is no longer needed. It means if the condition is you're mekabel tnai me'achshav, you'll do kach v'kach, mekabel at me'achshav, then it's already no, you don't need to do tnai kafel, you don't need tnai kodim l'maisa. That's some opinions say you don't need these two, and some opinions say you still need all four conditions. And when it comes to that, but even according to those that say you don't need the tnai kafel, it still has to be something realistic. It can't be me'achshav on something which is not possible to do it. Now, if a person says, instead of saying al menas or me'achshav, and that's not saying all the conditions, just says I'm making this tnai, and this tnai should be with whatever tnai God of bnei God of bnei Reuven, then it also has the same, because you're just saying it's on the basis of tnai God of bnei Reuven, which they already have all the four conditions attached to bnei God ubnei Reuven, and this is the machlekes that I'm saying the mechaber brings the two shittas. Do you need all four tanaim or you don't need the first two? The Avnei writes in Siman Kuf Pevov that being that the mechaber brings two shittas and does not clarify is not machriya clearly one or the other, it becomes a sveika de dinner, which means that we're going to have to be machmer, either she's mekudeshes or she's safek mekudeshes. And I think there's a Bishmul, which is medayik from later on in Shulchan Aruch, that it seems like the mechaber was machriya like the first day, that you don't need all the four tanaim, you just has to be something which is efsher l'kaimai. What happens if you don't say the lashon tnai? You don't say on condition, and you don't say al menas, and you don't say me'achshav, and you don't say kitnoi bnei God bnei Reuven. All you do is you are mekudesh to me, and you shall do kach v'kach. and if you don't do kach v'kach, you are not mekudesh. So there are the machlekes achronim, the chelkas Yaakov and Siman Amates, and Oineg Yom Tov and Siman Kuf Mem Beis. They hold that it still works because just the fact that you don't say the word al Tnai or al Menas or Me'achshav, but you specify the condition, is already enough to make it work. The Avnei Nezer in Siman Kuf Pei Vav and the Mekor Chaim and the Chos Pesach. And the Rama himself in his Chuvas, Siman and Beis, say that the Tnai doesn't kick in, and because this is not, since it doesn't say the word on condition, it becomes like a Gili Milsa, not like a Tnai, and therefore the act of קידושין is valid, and the Tnai doesn't take any effect, and therefore if she does not fulfill the Tnai, she's still considered Mekudeshes. Now what happens if they do the Tnai? If they make the Tnai was done properly, with all the conditions, whichever way you're going to do it, and then she did not fulfill the Tnai, so obviously the קידושין never kicked in. What does it mean the קידושין never kicked in? She doesn't even need a get. It means to begin with, she's not Mekudesh. The קידושין never had any, the קידושין, since they were from the beginning, they were made with those conditions, then the קידושין are no longer in effect. The קידושין never kicked in, not no longer in effect. The קידושין never chapped onto anything. Obviously, if there's קידושין, if there's a Tnai in קידושין, but then the Tnai was not done by Nisuin, it's a whole different discussion. It's a Tzaddik and Siman the Reish Peites or Reish Tzadik. Then in the middle, Reish Tzadik is a long tshuva. I think Reish Tzadik's of Yudches. That's a Tzaddik that goes into this B'derech Agav and the discussion whether a Tnai which was said by קידושין but was not said by and by Nisuin was done. The Nisuin was done without any Tnai was stam. What the effect of it is. Reish Tzadik. Reish Tzadik, Sifkat Ois Yudches. But I'm not going into it now. So we said if the Tnai is not done, she's not Mekudesh. Now what happens if the reason why the Tnai was not fulfilled, she really did want to be Mekayim the Tnai, but there was an oinus, and therefore she was not able to be Mekayim the Tnai. The oinus came in and took apart the Tnai, and the Tnai is no longer, she was not able to fulfill the Tnai because of her oinus. So then that goes again to Machlekes Achronim. If you look in the Taz and the Chalkas Mechaykik and the Beis Shmuel and the Erech Lechem, all of them here, they all say in the Aruch HaShulchan, they all say she's completely not Mekudesh and no קידושין, and she does not need a get. The Avnei Miluim takes and looks at it in a different, says that you have to look at what made the oinus, and where was the oinus. If you say that she was not able to fulfill the Tnai because of oinus, then she's not Mekudesh, she doesn't need a get. But what happens if she was not interested in fulfilling the Tnai, and by oinus she did fulfill the Tnai? So then we don't use the oinus both ways, and we say that oinus, whether the Tnai was nesbatel because of oinus or the Tnai was neskayim because of oinus, the קידושין are not, the קידושין are batel. We say no, if the Tnai was nesbatel, she was not able to fulfill it because of oinus, then the קידושין are taka batel. But if the action was done by oinus, then she is safek mekudeshes according to the Avnei Miluim over here. He explains that you can't take all the other poskim and say that it only that applies to oinus across the board. There are that's how he explains it. There's the Tiv קידושין to the Maral Tzon. So he in Sifkot and Aleph, right in the beginning of the Siman, he says that again he also makes he doesn't give a broad oinus exemption like the Beis Shmuel. He makes a different differentiation, different than the Avnei Miluim, and he says that if the Tnai is a Tnai which was for her benefit, that means it was a Tnai which was done that she's going to get something, she's going to do something for her benefit, and then the oinus happened, then, and the Tnai was not fulfilled, then she's for sure not Mekudesh. Why? Because the whole agreement was, in her mind, was based on that she's going to get this specific Tnai for her benefit. But if the Tnai was to her detriment, and then because of the oinus, the Tnai wasn't fulfilled, we don't say that the Kiddushin are batel, we say that she is Safek Mekudeshes. When it comes to these things of Tanaim, it makes no difference if the Tnai is made by the man that he should do something, that means on condition that I will do kach v'kach, you're Mekudesh, and if I don't do kach v'kach, you're not Mekudesh. Yeah, or the Tnai is on something she's going to do. If you do kach v'kach, the Kiddushin are your Mekudesh, and if you don't do kach v'kach, the Kiddushin are not Mekudesh. Yeah, and this is only as long as it's something that again is for her benefit. But now this is, and if it's such a scenario that he makes a Tnai for his benefit, means he says on condition that I will do kach v'kach as for my benefit, or on condition that you will do kach v'kach for your benefit. But what happens if he says I will do it on condition of something which is beneficial for you, not beneficial for me, or something, or the other way around, then it's pitume mili, it's just a way of just words that have it has no real validity, just made to make the other person feel good, and therefore the Tnai is not a real,
If they're doing from here, if I'm telling you to do something I'm going to do something for
if I am going to give you $1 million, you're Mekudesh. It's something which so that's just words to make her feel good. Unless the Tnai was done, the Prisha says, if this Tnai was done, the beginning of the Kiddushin in such a way that it's clear that the Kiddushin are dependent on it, then it works. Now the Gra brings out over here an important point which is not mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch, that obviously we also need the wife's agreement to be Niskadesh. So if the woman makes a Tnai before the Kiddushin, and the Tnai is not fulfilled, also the Kiddushin are not Chal. Her acceptance of the Kiddushin, because she also has the same rights to make a Tnaim. It's not only a Tnai that he makes and then it works only if he makes a Tnai. It will also work if she makes a Tnai. Now what happens if a person makes the Tiv Kiddushin and the Avnei Miluim, Tiv Kiddushin Sifkot and Yud, and Avnei Miluim Sifkot and Hey, they both discuss what happens if a person makes a Tnai on something which already happened. And he says, Lamashli says, if it rained today, then you're Mekudesh. And you looked, and it rained today. So then the Kiddushin works even if you don't have all the Tnai Kiddushin, all the four of Hein, Kadim Lalav.
Who cares if you have all four?
Huh? That's why he says you don't need all four.
I'm saying, either way would be the Kiddushin. If you have all four, the Tnai wouldn't be the Tnai. And if you don't have all four, also the Tnai wouldn't be the Tnai because it rained.
Because it did rain. So he says if he uses that word, al Tnai, that something that shekvar,
something that she can control.
Right, so that's why he says that for that you don't need all the Tanaim. If he says that, and a taka happened, if he says al Tnai that it rained today, and a taka didn't rain, then she's not Mekudesh. If he says al Tnai that it rained and it did rain, then she is Mekudesh. Then, what happens if you have a Tnai which does not include an action? It's a Tnai which is on condition that she should not do something. which is a sheval taisa, not something which is not. For example, the Tnai is your mekudesh, the Kiddushin is on condition that you don't go to Eretz Yisrael, you don't leave Eretz Yisrael, or something along those lines. Do you need all the four conditions or not? All the four rules or not? The Chassan Sofer holds that you don't need all of them, and the Yismach Lev of a Siman Yud Beis holds that you still need all the four, even by a Sheva al Tasa. Not everybody is aware of all these four conditions. Actually, most people are not aware of them because not everybody learns them. So if you are in a scenario where a person makes a condition and he does not know all the four, makes a Tnai, and does not know all the four conditions, but upon investigation, you do your research and you see that this guy or this girl would have never gotten married if they would know that the lack of four rules, four conditions would make the Tnai bottle. That means if they would know that you need all four, they would have made all four. They don't know. They made it the way that they know best. So then we apply all the four, Ki'ilu, all the four applies to it, and the Tnai is still Kayam. But if a person knows all four, and he does not do it, that's when we say the fact that he skipped one out is because he intentionally did not want this Tnai to really do it. That's according to the Kiryas Melech Rav. The Noida B'Sha'arim holds that the Tnai is batul, even if he did not know what the fact that he did, his lack of knowledge, and the fact that he would have, if he would have known, he would have done it, is not enough to make the Tnai make the Tnai retroactively valid. That is all up until here is all Seif Gimel. Comes Seif Daled, and this is where the Ramah gives a bunch of more rules for Tnai. I skipped the Mechaber, went straight to the Ramah. The Ramah first starts. The first thing is that the Tnai has to be in one thing, and the Maisa has to be in something else. Just like Tnai Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven, that they're going to get the land. That is what's going to happen. And the Tnai is they're going to go to war when the Shvatim and Eretz Yisrael need it. But if the Tnai and the action are both in the same thing, that means, for example, he says, I am Mekadesh you on condition that the tabas that I'm giving you is mine, for example, and if the tabas is not going to be mine, then you're not Mekadesh, then it has no validity. The Taz has no validity. Why? Because, well, if it's tabas, for sure not, because there's no Kiddushin, it's going to give back to him, and then she was not Niskadesh with anything. However, if it was done with Me'achshav and Almanas, the Chalkas Mechoykik and the Beis Shmuel say that it does work except for in the case of a tabas or kesef, because then the condition and the action are both in the same thing, and if there's no kesef, if there's no tabas, then there is no Kiddushin. And that is when the condition and the action are going to contradict each other. What happens if the condition and the action are in the same idea, in the same vein? They're both the same, but they're not contradicting each other. The Beis Shmuel says that it's not a Tnai. Now, what does the Mechaber hold? The Mechaber obviously knew this because it's all Machlokes Rishonim. The Mechaber saw in Beis Yosef, he does discuss it, but over here in the Mechaber in the Shulchan Aruch, he Bechlal doesn't mention this concept of that the Tnai and the Maisa have to be in two separate things. So obviously the Mechaber Bechlal doesn't hold of it, as opposed to the Ramah, who does Choishesh Akopanim L'Chumra to follow the opinion of the Rosh, which is brought in the Torah.
They're similar, but they're not similar. What do you mean they're similar? They're not similar. You said according to the Shmuel, if it's
Yeah. So if it's something, if I do when it's close to each other is when you have almanas, the tabas is mine, you're mekudesh, and if the tabas is not mine, then you're not mekudesh, right? Then the קידושין and the tabas are contradicting each other.
Does the tnai have to have a time frame? It could be like 30 years.
Depends on what you say. It could be that's what the Aruch HaShulchan says. Don't make a long-term tnai because then you're left hanging for many years.
No, so can it be can you get tnai that would cancel the קידושין? So when you might only do that for...
That was what some Chachamim tried to do in the 30s, and it didn't work. And all the Rabbanim came out against it, and if Rabbi Hamnik wants to give a share about it, he will. We'll give him all the books. Go through, you know them. Ein Tnai B'Kiddushin, and the Deir Achlein, and all those other books about it. If the Tnai is on something which is also to do al Pi Torah, then there's different categories of it, that's what's discussed at the end of the Ramah over here and in Sif Hey. Something which is Masna Mashakos of Torah, what the exact definition is. Make a Tnai that you're Mekudesh. If you eat Chazer, you're Mekudesh. If you don't eat Chazer, you are not Mekudesh. Over there we say that that Tnai is considered Afshar L'Kaima. She could fulfill it. Why can she fulfill? How could she fulfill it? She'll eat chazer, she'll chap malchus, but she'll still be mekudesh. So that is still considered a tnai, and it's not masna mashakasav v'tayra, because she could decide she's not eating chazer and she's not mekudesh. It's not something which is impossible for her to do. But if he makes a tnai that he's only al Tanai, that shetiboil la asur la, that she's going to be with somebody that's asur for her, then it's considered a Tanai she efshar l'kaimoi. The Aruch HaShulchan says it makes no difference if it is something if it's asura if it's a guy who's asura la midaraisa, asura la only. But what happens if he tells her al Tanai that shetibali lemuter lach, to somebody that's muter for you to be with? So, and they're talking about maybe before the wedding. So according to the Tur, it's a Tnai kosher. And Chalkas Mechaykik brings it down in Sifkat and Zayin, even though there's a little bit of Isser's nose over here involved, but the Prisha disagrees with it. This is the base Shmuel brings. Why? For a very simple reason. What happens at the moment of Beila? The קידושין kicks in. That means that at that moment, that person becomes Asur, even though before that she was Mutter. Comes afterwards, the moment the Beila happens, she becomes Asur Alai. Because she becomes Eishes Ish at that specific moment. And especially if he says Almanas or he says Ma'achshav, then the קידושין kick in retroactively for sure. It's not a Tnai, because she becomes Niv'elas to somebody who is Asur La. That is what the Prisha.
Right now,
Before the קידושין, it's Mutter. Or somewhat Mutter, according to the Tur, the way the Tur understands that it's Mutter. The Prisha disagrees with it. The Bach has a different opinion and says, what's the mutter law mean? But essentially, the Tnai still kicks in, because what happens if he dies? Then that person, she could be with that person. So the קידושין could it's after the kaimai, after the death of the husband. Now, what happens if the condition is made on somebody? Divorce or death, whatever. If there is a condition which is not dependent on these two people, rather it's dependent on a third party, that means you're mekudesh al Tanai that Pliny is going to give you land, that Pliny is going to do a shidduch or whatever it is, then that's still considered a Tanai, even though neither of them have the power to do it, because potentially with enough money, you could solve all these things. Convince somebody else, pay him to do what has to be done. So the fact that it's not in their hands directly in their hands to do it, the fact that they make such a Tnai, the Tnai is Kayam, because the wife could go and convince the person to give the land. It means if the Tnai is a Tnai that you give me, that Yosef will sell me his house. So good, so you'll have to work on it, and with enough money you'll be able to get Yosef to sell you the house. Now what happens if he tells her, Al-Manas, that you're going to give me money, and he knows that she's poor? Well, Al-Manas, you give me $1 million. And he knows that she's poor. So then it's something which right now she cannot be Mekayim, but down the line she could be Mekayim. She'll win the lottery, she'll rob a bank, she'll borrow, she'll do something that's going to get her the money, then it's not a problem. Yeah, because that's the Aruch HaShulchan Sifkat and Yudalef. Essentially, any Tnai and moment is something which could be fulfilled. It's just a matter of putting some effort into it. One of the things that the Torah says that a person, this is if, hey, one of the things that the Torah, that the husband is obligated for a wife, there's 3 things. She'er ksusa v'inosa lo yigra. That means clothing, food, and oina are 3 things that a husband is obligated to provide to his wife. What happens if they make a condition before the chasana? The husband makes a condition, al Tnai, that I'm not mischayev in she'era and ksusa. They're both financial obligations. The Mechaber says that Tnai is kayam, and he is not obligated to give her the she'er and the ksus, which that essentially is, many of the financial prenups are along those lines. People come in with their own money and they make conditions. They make conditions beforehand. This could be one of the conditions. She'era and ksusa, you're not giving to her, and she's mekudesh. But if he makes a condition that she does not receive aina, then the Tnai is batal, and the Kiddushin are kayam, and she could take him to Bezdin and sue him that he's not mekayim the aina, even though there was such a condition made. That's what Shulchan Aruch paskins. And the Ramah explains, the Ramah gives you the logic for it, because the masna al mashikosav b'Torah on something which is financial, like she'era and ksusa, the Tnai is kayam. Why? We'll soon see. On something which is not mammon, then the Tnai is not kayam. And the Ramah says, Yeshayimrim, that also applies not only to masna al mashikosav b'Torah, but also al divrei seifrim, something which is al divrei seifrim, and many people say this is a catch-all for all the conditions that were discussed, whether it's mammon, whether it's isurim, whether it's other tanaim, everything else. So now we'll go through this halacha. Why is it that the person who's masna al mashikosav b'Torah and something which is mammon, the Tnai is still kayam? Yeah, they have the shit of the Ran. The Ran says because a person has a right to be moichel their finances. The woman has a right to say, I'm moichel the chiyuvei mammon. It's not that the masna al mashikosav b'Torah, he's not going to do it. She's moichel. She's foregoing that he doesn't have to give it to her. So the Tnai is that she's moichel. The Tnai is that she's moichel. That's something which she could be moichel. She could be moichel, something which according to Torah comes to her, and the Kiddushin will still be valid. That is how the Ran understands it, and that's also the Lavush explains it that way, and the Taz also explains it that way. But by Aina, it's not moment. The Shitta of the Mordechai, which is brought in Darkei Moshe over here, that even by Aina, a Tnai is Kayam, and she could be Moichel Aina. Why is that? Darkei Moshe doesn't really explain it. But if you look in the Bishmol, סימן Samachtes, Sifkat and Hey, says Aina is also Davar Shebemamen, the Haraya, you see that women sometimes will use Aina could become a financial, they could get financial benefits for it, to put it in a light way. And that's why it's still considered a Davar Shebemamen, and therefore, according to those shittas, not the Shulchan Aruch, Shulchan Aruch says you can't be Meichel, according to those shittas, you could be Meichel. But we said the first reason why Davar Shebemamen Masna Mashikosa B'Torah Dover Shemamim Tnai Kayim is a shit of the Ran, because there's a din, it's midin mechila. She is moichel, and therefore, once she is moichel it, he has no more rights to demand it. The Ktsois in Chosh Mishpat Siman Reish Tes Sifkot Yud Aleph goes through this whole topic as discussed in connection to Dinei Tnai and Chosh Mishpat, but he discusses it in connection to, discusses the קידושין aspect and discusses Tnai Sheb'mam Masna Mashikosa B'Torah, and he says that the Torah never ordered these as a chiyuv that's always chiyuv on the husband. The Torah ordered them that if the wife wants them, he has to provide them. If the wife doesn't want them, he doesn't have to provide them. So when he makes such a condition, and the wife decides that she does not want shade and ksus, then the chiyuv midiraisa never kicked in. It's not even Masna Mashikosa B'Torah. It's not midin mechila. It's midin that there was never a Tnai. There was never Masna Mashikosa B'Torah. It was that he made an agreement that she's not interested in asking him for it. So therefore, if the condition is that she's not interested in asking him for it, she doesn't want it anymore, so she doesn't want it. So it's not nothing to do with mechila. According to the Shimon Shkop, it's nothing to do with mechila, and it's nothing to do with whether she wants or not wants. It's a condition in collecting. She's not waiving that she's not receiving it. She's waiving the right to demand it. Instead of her, she's not saying I'm moichelet. She's not saying I don't want it. The reason why it's kayam is because a person has a right to make a condition that I am not going to demand something. I'm not going to be teveya it. The Tnai is not that I'm not going to give it to you. The Tnai is not that you don't want it. The Tnai is not that you are moichelet. The Tnai is that you're agreeing that you will never ask me for it. You will never be teveya me in bezdin for it. And there, such a Tnai is not Masna Mashikosa B'Torah. I'm masna on something which I'm not going to do. So I agree not to be teveya you. What does it mean in all these Tnai, and this if, what does it mean Tnai Kaya when it comes to She'er and Ksus, She'era and Ksusa, that she cannot be teveya him in bezdin, like we said before. That means that whichever way you look at it, whether it's according to Rav Shimon Shkop that she agrees not to be teveya it, or according to the Ran, and there's a majority of people take that opinion that she was moichel, she also can't be teveya it, or according to the Ksus that she decides she doesn't want it. That's the agreement. She doesn't want it. If she doesn't want it, she can't be teveya it. However, obviously, in such a scenario, you need a Tnai kafel, right? That's what it seems like, because it's a Tnai. That's what the Bishmol says. The Bishmol says, in She'er and Ksus, you need a Tnai kafel. Bishmol here. Tiv קידושין says you don't need a Tnai kafel. And Sifkot Yud Gimel over here in the Siman. She'er and Ksusa. She'er and Ksusa, you don't need a Tnai kafel. Why does it? I didn't go into specifically why he does not feel that there's no need, according to Tifkidush. According to Shmuel, makes sense. Like every other Tnai, you need a Tnai kafel. Because Tifkidush, I didn't go into it why they didn't look specifically why he does not, why you don't need a Tnai kafel. All this is if the Tnai is on the chiyuv. Right? I'm saying is I'm not going to be, I'm making a Tnai that I'm not going to pay you or give you money for She'era and Ksusa. What happens if he makes a Tnai that I'm just not recognizing this halacha? He's not saying I'm not giving you She'era and Ksusa. Shtikl kaifer. I'm not recognizing this mitzvah. Not recognizing this pasuk in Torah. Al Tnai that this din is a mumar, yeah, okay. Al Tnai that this din doesn't apply to me b'chlal. This pasuk doesn't apply to me. So then, according to the Mishnah Melech, it's no longer masna al mammon. It's masna al mashikosa b'Torah. Because he's not saying I don't want to give you the money. He's saying is I don't want to accept this mitzvah. And that's how the Aruch HaShulchan also paskins. That means that it's masna, it's masna mashikosa b'Torah, and the Tnai is bottle. But according to the Ktsas, the Tnai is still kayam, because again, go back to the Ktsas. there is no chiyuv d'oraisa on such a thing. It's a chiyuv if she wants it. And she doesn't want it. So I don't care which lashon you say, whether you say din or you say moment, it makes no difference. Still, the fact is she doesn't want it, and she's allowed to say, I'm not interested in it. And if she doesn't want it, then there is no din. If there's no din, then you're not masna mashakos b'Torah. Now, b'negea to aina, is there a way to get around it? So according to the Beis Shmuel, and Beis Shmuel here and the Erech Lechem and Siman Samachtes, if he says, I'm marrying you al menas, that you will relieve me from aina, shetifteri, make me potter from the chiyuv of aina, then the Tnai is kaim. Because he's not saying al menas that I'm not giving you, al menas that you're going to waive it every time it's relevant. The Erech Lechem and Siman Samachtes, I think it looks like from the Beis Shmuel over here also that works, but the Piskei Halachos of Karlin, it says that it's a suffix. And even if he says al menas, and even if he says me'achshav, when it comes to aina, it doesn't work, because again, it's masna mashakasuv b'Torah, it's part of קידושין. Something which is, now the last part of the Ramah is something which is midiraisa, something which is midirabanan, is the same thing as something which is a deraisa. The way the Beis Shmuel over here, Sifkat Yud Gimel, and the Beis Hillel and other ones understand it, is that it applies the same thing, that in Dinei Mamen, Masna Mashakasuv, and the Divrei Chachamim, Divrei Seferim, is Kayam, and Masne on something which the Chachamim obligated, which is not Mamen, is Ein Tnai Kayam. That's the Beis Shmuel. However, the Machne Ephraim brings the name of the Maharit, that in something which is an Isur, this is the Isur de Rabbanon, even if it's not Mamen, Tnai is still Kayim, there's no Masna Mashakosov b'Torah when it comes to Isurim de Rabbanon, which are not Mamen. Happens to be, this is the other extreme, which is the Hagoyes Mordechai, that he holds that the Chachamim, that they made the Tnai Mamen Medivrei. So when they made the Tnai Mamen, then it's the Chachamim Hamidu Divreim stronger than Divrei Torah, and therefore it's Masne on the Chiyuv Mamoini of the Midirabanan is stronger than Masne on the Chiyuv Mamoini Midiraisa, and the Tnai is Batal. But according to the majority of the Poskim, the Beis Shmuel, the Beis Hillel, and many others, then we say that everything that the Rabbanon, that the understanding of the Ramah is that whether the Rabbanon, everything in the Rabbanon has the same thing as a Deiraisa, whether it is as Mitzad Isurim, whether it is Mitzad Mamen. With that, we conclude Siman Lamed Ches. Siman Memvav discusses the dinim of koil in קידושין. Now you did know already, I'm not going to go into it right now, but the background that you have from the Simanim in the beginning of Even HaEzer regarding koil, a lot of them you'll see here coming into play over here also, and the same Yesodus you learned there will be applied over here also.